We are just days away from the start of Sacramento Kings training camp, and I've got 9 training camp storylines you need to be paying attention to over the next few weeks. It's all right here for you on Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all off-season long and, of course, soon to be all regular season long. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports anchor and reporter for ABC 10 News. More than excited to tip off another season covering Sacramento Kings basketball. Sure, there's some concern, there's some hesitation on this end to be fully committed and excited to whatever this version of the Sacramento Kings is. But like I've talked about with you over the course of the last few months of this offseason, there's a lot of curiosity when it comes to this Kings team. A lot of different things that we have discussed in hypotheticals and tried to guess or put the pieces together or figure out what Scott Perry and Doug Christie's vision is. Short term, what are they going to be doing with this roster that fits a long-term vision, right? And finally, we're going to have next week some actual on-court evidence to break down, to look at, and then it'll get even better when we get preseason basketball games. Then it'll get even better when we get regular season basketball games, right? And the answers that we get might not make us feel better, might not be to our liking when it comes to the state of this team and how good or bad they're going to end up being next season. But at least we'll start to get an idea beginning next week. Monday is Sacramento Kings Media Day, which of course I will be at. I will be releasing a huge Monday Kings Media Day edition of the Locked On Kings podcast after Media Day has wrapped up. I'll share with you kind of my thoughts and takeaways from being inside the Kings practice facility, which they turn into the Media Day stage with all the different booths. I'll have plenty of sound for you and video of Doug Christie, Scott Perry, all the Kings players chatting with us, answering questions for the first time heading into this season. A lot of stuff to look forward to. Then on Tuesday, training camp begins. And on today's podcast, we're going to dive into 9 training camp storylines that I've written down. These are 9 things that I'm going to be paying very close attention to. I don't know if I'm going to have answers to all 9 of these questions or a firm idea of all 9 of these storylines by the end of training camp, by the start of next season. Who knows? But we'll get our first glimpse. And the opportunity that I and other Kings media members have to be able to attend training camp, they usually let us in over the final 10, 15 minutes of practice or of camp so we can get a little bit of a glimpse before we talk to Coach Christie and whichever players are made available for that day. We try to figure out what we can from that very, very brief glimpse, and these are the things that I'm going to be paying close attention to when I enter that Kings practice facility. Of course, these are not the only 9 storylines out there. If there are storylines that you are interested in and you want to share, feel free to do so at any time. Or if you want to respond, share your thoughts on any of these storylines, you can do so at MattGeorgeSack on Twitter. Email me, mattgeorgesports@gmail.com. Leave your thoughts in the YouTube comment section down below. First storyline that I'm going to be paying attention to, and this is something that hopefully jumps off the page right away. What does Doug Christie's team look like? Because when Doug Christie took over for Mike Brown midway through last season, and in a lot of ways righted a ship that was sinking quickly, spiraling out of control, Doug Christie, in a way, resurrected or at the very least stabilized the Sacramento Kings season at that time. And even though he made slight tweaks and slight adjustments, there's only so much you can do in the middle of a season with a coaching staff that you've inherited and a roster that under normal circumstances is trying to figure things out. And last year, especially with all the chaos going on, was really trying to figure things out. Now, Doug Christie has the full-time head coach position. No more interim tag. He is the man. He knows it. And more importantly, everybody in that locker room knows it. And he's had the last handful of months to really start to put together what his basketball team is going to look like. And I'm sure he's been working closely with new general manager Scott Perry to help kind of carry out this new identity that they want to establish. But what looks different right away? Is it a reflection of who Doug Christie was as a player? Okay, Doug Christie being this defensively minded player. Is this a team that's going to attack the defensive end really, really hard? Or is Doug Christie going to lean on more of the strengths of this roster and try and get this team back to the high-scoring, fast-paced play that they had a couple of years ago, Beam Team 1, when they ended their playoff drought? What looks different from last season, despite the core of this team remaining the same? What is unique? What is Doug Christie's stamp on this team going to be, and what does it look like? I'm very, very fascinated to see that, because we're going, like, this is some of these other storylines I have kind of ideas of what the answers are going to be because I've kind of sort of seen it before. We're going in blind into the Doug Christie head coach era. He's never been a head coach in this league before, other than what he was able to do as an interim coach. And that's just him putting his toe in the water. Now he's diving in head first. So what does Doug Christie's version of the Sacramento Kings look like? How does Doug imprint himself and his joy and love of the game into how the Sacramento Kings play? I'm very, very fascinated to see that. Another one, this is something that I've been talking about all summer long. I want to see how Domantas Sabonis looks with both Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan. Now, of course, he spent a whole season with DeMar last year. He spent a third of a season with Zach LaVine last year. But there were rumors and speculation, not speculation. Domantas Sabonis told us at his basketball camp earlier this summer that he was going down to LA to work out with some teammates. We assumed DeMar DeRozan was one of them. Zach LaVine might have also been there as well. We don't know. But we think back to last summer when DeMar first joined the Kings. We saw videos of DeMar and Sabonis working together at USC, but we never really saw a two-man game between the two of them consistently last season. That's something that I feel has to change. If you're going to make this group work and you have a player like Domantas Sabonis who is so incredible at what he does, running the ball through him, the dribble handoff game, the potential two-man game that's there, you want that to work with DeMar DeRozan, and you especially want that to work with Zach LaVine. So do we, whether it's in scrimmages, in preseason, whatever, do we get a glimpse of Sabonis working closely with those two veteran scorers? Because the three of them are going to be the foundation of the Sacramento Kings offense next season. Storyline number 3. He's the new point guard in Sacramento. He's coming off of winning a Eurobasket title with Germany and winning the MVP of the Eurobasket tournament, Dennis Schröder. Some believe Schröder is the key to making this whole thing work in Sacramento as the point guard. And he comes in after having bounced around the league a lot in recent years. He's looking for a home. Can this be the home? Can he hit the ground running and build off of the momentum that he established for himself with that Eurobasket run? What does Dennis Schröder look like as a floor general, as a leader, as someone who is more than capable of being a scoring guard and has been a scoring guard through much of his career? But the Sacramento Kings are going to need more of the playmaking side of Dennis Schröder. The good news is, Schröder showed off a little bit of that ability in the final and semifinal of the Eurobasket tournament, had 12 assists in both of those games. So, hey, is that a positive sign? Granted, Eurobasket isn't in the NBA, but is that a positive sign that when needed, Schröder can take less of a scoring role and take on more of the responsibilities of running a team and running an offense, which this group needs, especially with Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan trying to make it work in Sacramento like they were unable to really make it work in Chicago. Still got 6 more storylines to get to. Some I'm very excited to dive more into, and we will get to those in just a second. Before that, though, I want to let you know that today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by Skims. When I found out that Skims was making underwear for men, I was intrigued because I've heard so much about their quality from friends and family, so I decided, you know what, it's time to give them a try, and let me tell you, it lives up to the hype. I tried the Skims boxer brief. I'm hooked. They're so unbelievably comfortable. They're perfect for an active lifestyle, someone like me who's moving around a lot, covering different events, but they're also comfortable when I'm having one of those days where I'm just sitting at my desk at work, if I'm out playing around a golf, if I'm chasing my 4-year-old son around the yard. It's perfect for everything in my lifestyle, and it helps everything stay in place all day long, whether I'm working out or just running errands or getting through a shift at work. It's the most comfortable and reliable underwear I've ever owned, plus the lightweight material feels amazing. It's almost like you're wearing nothing at all. Shop SKIMS Mens at skims.com. That's SKIMS.com. And let them know that we sent you. After you place your order, select podcast in their survey and select Locked On Kings or Locked On NBA in the drop-down menu that follows. So we've talked about head coach Doug Christie. We've talked about the 3 veterans, the big 3, if you want to call them that, of DeMar, DeMontis, and Zach LaVine. We've talked about the new guy, the point guard, Dennis Schröder. But what about the rookies? I'm very, very curious for different reasons about these 2 rookies. When the Kings drafted Nick Clifford and Maxime Reynaud, I heard very quickly and shared with you on this podcast very quickly that there are many in the organization that believe both of those guys are capable of competing for a rotational spot right away. Nick Clifford showed off his ability as a NBA-ready guard immediately with how overall great he was in NBA Summer League in Las Vegas. Maxime Reynaud had great moments in Las Vegas, also had some moments where he struggled, especially on the defensive end of the floor. But there are many in Sacramento, including those on the Kings coaching staff, that believe that both of those guys will be competing for rotational spots right away. I would go as far as to say, me personally, I think Nick Clifford will be in the rotation for the Sacramento Kings on opening night. Maxime Reynaud is a second-round pick. We'll have to wait and see, but he's going to get opportunities to show that during training camp. When it comes to Maxime Reynaud, I've talked about this before. A lot of what Maxime needs to learn, Nick needs to learn this too, but Maxime as a big man just needs to learn the physicality of the NBA game. And where he struggled on the defensive end is where I think he's going to get targeted. When Maxime Reynaud is on the floor, as incredibly tall as he is as a natural 7-footer, he needs to bulk up. He's not the biggest dude. There are going to be guys that are shorter than him that are going to have no problem trying to push him around. And he's teammates with one of the most physical bigs in the league in Domantas Sabonis, somebody who Maxime Reynaud admits he's watched for years and he idolizes in a lot of ways. So I want to see if we get an opportunity to get a glimpse at Domantas Sabonis and Maxime Reynaud working together, whether it's one-on-one, Sabonis helping Max just learn the game, or if we're in scrimmages and it's starters versus bench unit and Maxime Reynaud has the opportunity or the unfortunate reality of trying to guard and stop Domantas Sabonis. I've said, not that I want the kid to get hurt, but I hope Sabonis kind of beats him up a little bit so he can learn and adapt and understand the physicality of the NBA so that when he gets that first opportunity, whether it's on opening night or 10 games into the season or whenever it is, he'll be ready for it. And it won't be a reality shock when he takes a shoulder from a 7-footer or 6'11 center that's got 40 pounds on him, takes a shoulder right to the chest and goes, oh my goodness, this is a whole different level of the NBA or of basketball that I was not prepared for. So I'm very much paying attention to that. And then for Nick Clifford specifically, it's, hey man, can you continue to build off of what you showed during Summer League? Nick was so versatile during the Summer League. No matter who he played with, he provided He brought something to the table, whether it was his scoring. Remember, in the first few games, he wasn't scoring as much at the beginning, but was scoring a lot in the second half of games. The 3-point shooting, the grabbing rebounds, potential to actually handle the basketball and bring the ball up the floor every once in a while. Like, when he's working with his NBA caliber teammates and against NBA caliber competition in training camp every single day, does that carry over? Does that continue? How NBA ready does he look? Because he's checked all the boxes to this point, but now you're going to get true NBA competition on a daily basis in training camp. Are you ready? Do you sink or do you swim? I'm very much looking forward to that from Maxime Reynaud. I kind of alluded to this, from Nick Clifford. I kind of alluded to this with talking about Nick potentially bringing the ball up the floor. What does the backup point guard position look like? That was a massive question throughout this summer that never really got answered. We thought it might be Devin Carter. He got some opportunity in Las Vegas Summer League, had some good moments, but ultimately, I don't think anybody felt any better about him having those responsibilities on this roster at the end of Summer League. And we know that Devin Carter was one of the names that the Sacramento Kings were floating and making available. So I don't know how confident that the Kings front office and Scott Perry is in Carter being an option at that backup point guard spot. Malik Monk is still on this roster. I'm expecting him to still be on this roster. And while it didn't really work out for him as the starting point guard for the Sacramento Kings last year, especially after De'Aaron Fox was traded away, Malik has thrived in Sacramento, coming off the bench as a ball handler. So I think Malik is more than capable of holding down that backup point guard spot in the 15 or so minutes a night that Dennis Schröder is not playing or needs a rest. So there's Malik, there's Nick Clifford, there's, I guess, Devin Carter still in that mix. I don't know if Keon Ellis is going to get some opportunity, even though I like him way more as an off-ball too. I don't know. That backup point guard spot, definitely something to pay attention to, as is Keegan Murray in general. Keegan Murray, 25 years old now. Keegan Murray going into the final year of his rookie scale contract. He is eligible for an extension. Many believe, myself included, that an extension will get done at some point during this season. But being a contract year and being a former top pick, I did a whole podcast on this last week, or is it earlier this week? Is this Keegan Murray's last chance to show his potential as a high-level, two-way, 3-and-D type player? I think we're more than confident in his ability to rebound the basketball. We're more than confident in his ability to defend, and we know he's a good three-point shooter. But is there more? Is there another level, or is there not? Is this who you are, or can you still take your game up a notch? This feels like the last chance to prove it. And when the conversations that I've had with people in the Kings organization, around the organization, outside the organization, when it comes to Keegan Murray, they all end up going in the same direction. Basically, everybody's saying, I want to see Keegan be more aggressive. Keegan's personality is not going to change in a summer. He's not going to show up and start yelling and screaming and talking a lot and demanding the basketball and anything like that. Never going to happen. That's not who Keegan is. But you don't have to be loud to be noticed. And I want to see if the aggressiveness is there from Keegan Murray. If when he gets the ball, when he gets those opportunities, he takes advantage of them. He does more than just fulfill the former Harrison Barnes role of standing on the perimeter and waiting for the kick-out pass and quite frankly, disappearing at times. How aggressive does Keegan Murray look? Do we get any sort of glimpses of the improvement on the offensive end? And I'm not saying that his defense doesn't matter. I'm not saying that his rebounding doesn't matter. His rebounding is something that really jumped off the page for us last season. Last season at this time during training camp, we were hearing more about the Kings' emphasis on crashing the offensive glass, and Keegan Murray was the guy that was doing that better than anybody else. It was like, wow, here comes this rebounding from Keegan, and he was able to do it all summer long. That's something that stood out to me immediately in training camp. For sure, I want to still see him rebound, and for sure, I still want to see him defend. But is Keegan going to have a moment or two in training camp where like, wow, there was something on offense that I haven't seen before. There was some aggression. I want to see more of it. Feels like Keegan's last chance to really show he's capable of doing that. So do we see that at all during training camp? I'll be paying close attention to that. Like I said at the top of the show, Locked On Kings is also brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here. We've settled in by now, right? And FanDuel is making sure that you're ready for kickoff every single week with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. There's so many fun ways to use FanDuel. It's why people love playing on FanDuel, because you can bet player props, you can build a same game parlay, or you can jump in live as the action is unfolding in front of you. If you're already watching the game, why not make some money on that game? It makes every single game that you are watching more exciting no matter what, even if it's one of those boring matchups between sub 500 teams, if you're watching your favorite team play, or maybe you're just following a game simply because you've got one or two players in your fantasy lineup that are suiting up on that given night. FanDuel is perfect for all of those scenarios and more. So if you're ready to play, download the FanDuel app right now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Because if you're a new customer, you bet that $5, you win, you'll get $300 in bonus bets for you to really get busy on FanDuel. Again, go to FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Another player who is extension eligible later on this season is Keon Ellis. And he was someone that was talked about a lot this offseason. The decision that the Sacramento Kings had with his team option. And because they decided to pick up his team option worth around $2.5 million a year, which is it's not just a steal. It's quite frankly, underpaying. Like, Keon Ellis, for how valuable he is and important he is for the Sacramento Kings team, is significantly underpaid at $2.5 million per year. But because they picked up that option and didn't negotiate a new contract with him, he will be an unrestricted free agent at the end of this year if the Kings and Keon don't come to an agreement on an extension, which I think he is extension eligible in February. So he'll be extension eligible in early 2026. It's what year? I genuinely, this season has been so flustering. Sometimes I forget if it's 2025 or 2026. I believe it's 2025. So early 2026 is when we will get that glimpse of Keon Ellis and when he becomes extension eligible and if the Kings are able to work something out. But what does that have to do with training camp? Well, is there a chip on Keon Ellis' shoulder? I'm not saying that he's going to show up to camp and he's going to pout and he's going to look angry because he's playing on a deal that is nowhere near what it should be. He's significantly underpaid for the role that he's going to have. He's making less money than many of the players that he's going to play over and have more minutes than next season. I'm not expecting a visibly upset Keon Ellis, or that when we see him on media day and ask him questions that he's going to say these bah humbug things. It's not who Keon is. It's not his personality. Keon has only ever been a great teammate, a phenomenal human being. So I'm not looking for that necessarily. But you can be the nicest guy in the world but still have a chip on your shoulder, right? Use this as fuel. Use this as motivation. And even if Keon Ellis' motivation is, man, you're going to regret not giving me the deal that I wanted then because the price tag's about to go up with how well I'm playing, or I'm going to go out and get that bag from some other team that appreciates me next summer. If that's Keon's motivation and it leads to him playing his best basketball, taking his game to another level and helping the Sacramento Kings win basketball games, that sounds pretty good to me. So with Keon Ellis, is there that chip on his shoulder? How aggressive does he look? Does he continue to shoot the you-know-what out of the basketball when he shot over 40% from three-point range last year? Does he get any opportunity as a backup point guard? What kind of lineups is he running with? Does he take over that six-man role from Malik Monk, or do they share it in some capacity? I'm very much interested in what Keon Ellis looks like in this training camp. It starts at the top with the veterans. It starts with Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan and Domantas Sabonis. But 1 through 15 with this roster, everybody that's a training camp invitee, anyone that's more than likely going to spend their time with the Stockton Kings, where's the buy-in? How bought in is everybody to this new era of Kings basketball and to Doug Christie's vision and Scott Perry's vision of the Sacramento Kings future? Because, it's funny, during training camps in the past under Mike Brown, Mike would drop a contract and have everybody sign it to say they were all in. They'd give 110%, blah, blah, blah. And at first it was cool. At first fans were like, oh, great, like commitment. Love that. And then it kind of turned into a joke or something that you rolled your eyes at. By the end of everything, it was very clear that not everybody was 100% all in. There was clear animosity and disconnect and differences of opinion within the locker room and the staff and whatever, blah, blah, blah. We don't need a contract drawn up. Doug Christie doesn't need to have everybody sign something and frame it in the practice facility for everybody to see. But does Doug, who is a former player, who is well respected by everyone he meets, does Doug command that respect, and does Doug command that commitment right away from this Kings team? And that leads into the final storyline is we've heard so much, plenty of words, right? There's a lot of talk over this summer. It was the time for talking. Scott Perry's press conference, Doug Christie's press conference, all these different identity traits of how the Sacramento Kings want to be known as a franchise, how they want to play, what they're going to be like going forward, establishing this new identity, this new culture in Sacramento. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. This is what I think this season is about more than anything. The Kings establishing that new culture led by Doug Christie and Scott Perry and finding out who in that locker room, who on this roster fits that culture and who does not. Make it clear and make it easy what work needs to be done starting at the trade deadline and going into next offseason. That to me is what this season is going to be about. But do we see the groundwork of that new identity start to be laid on day one of training camp, the first week of training camp, the first 2 weeks of training camp? Do we see the team get challenged on some of those areas at the start of camp, but by the end of camp and the start of the season, we can see significant growth in those particular areas? I'm very interested to see what the nice, very eloquent, very well said words of Scott Perry, how they actually translate into basketball. Because Doug Christie was very clear, and you can go and listen to my interview with him after his press conference when he was hired. I talked to him a lot about his relationship with Scott Perry and how closely the two of them are working together on this joint vision of what they want for the Sacramento Kings. Everything they said was fantastic, made me excited, made me believe in them as the new leadership of this organization. But now you got to have the actions back up the words. And hopefully I'm not expecting everything to look perfect right away. There absolutely won't be mistakes. But I want to see what is emphasized early, how much accountability there is for players who don't meet that standard, and who amongst the players is working closely with Doug and with Perry to meet that standard. Who's going to be the leader? Who's going to be the extension of Doug to make sure this identity, this foundation is met? These are all things that I'm going to be paying very close attention to and looking out for during training camp. Of course, after pretty much every day of training camp, I plan on having a Locked On Kings podcast episode with the sound and the interviews with the players and Doug Christie from training camp. And I'll share with you my takeaways, things that I noticed from training camp, the biggest notes from each day of training camp. I plan on attacking next week hard. We are diving head first into this season. Sacramento Kings basketball is nearly back. I'm very excited to have you with me as we start this journey once again. Who knows where it's going to lead? But the journey has begun, and it's always exciting when a new season begins. Appreciate your support as always. Can't wait to have you join me on the next episode of the Locked On Kings podcast. Until then, my name is Matt George. You've been listening to the Locked On Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.